Lines at food banks that stretched for miles, and millions of Americans facing imminent eviction. These were the scenes etched into our minds from March of 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic brought to light a silent epidemic that threatens to destroy even more lives: financial illiteracy. Financial illiteracy means the lack of essential financial knowledge and fundamentals. Because so many people are financially illiterate, millions of Americans are just one paycheck away from financial disaster. Contrary to popular belief, this deficit affects all income levels. 48% of Americans making more than $100,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck. Additionally, because Americans lack a financial education, a majority of families in the US do not have an emergency fund. This fund is money put aside to weather the occasional crisis, such as a health complication, a car repair, or a job loss. This fund should contain 3 to 6 months of expenses, but the Federal Reserve found that 40% of Americans could not even afford a $400 emergency expense. Financial illiteracy has many associated costs. In 2021, Americans lost more than $350 billion in unnecessary banking fees and high interest rates. Financial illiteracy also has social emotional costs. Divorce rates soar, families rupture, and women stay with abusive men for financial security. Name any situation, and it goes back to money. Americans are financially illiterate because most schools do not teach personal finance. Schools force students to learn trigonometry, yet how many of us will use it again after graduation? In contrast, how many monetary transactions will we each conduct on a daily basis for the rest of our lives? Students also do not learn about money management from friends or family. People do not talk about money with anyone, including their coworkers, friends, and even their spouse. This phenomenon is called the money taboo. People are more likely to discuss their love life with strangers than their financial decisions. This taboo also permeates the home. Parents do not talk to their children about money management as a result of their own financial insecurities, leaving their children uninformed and unprepared. When I saw the pandemic's devastating financial effects, I realized that I needed to do something to help my classmates avoid this fate, because our school does not provide a personal finance class. This epiphany prompted me to launch the Financial Literacy Club. This club provides high schoolers at AJA the opportunity to learn basic personal finance, such as the importance of emergency funds, having good credit, and managing credit cards, in order to become financially literate before they go off to college. This club has great participation, with 20% of the school attending. However, attendance is voluntary, and only so much can be covered in a short club period. Bottom line, our students need AJA to have a required personal finance course in our curriculum. These classes have a proven positive effect. The FDIC found that people that took a financial literacy class were significantly more likely to have a checking account, budget wisely, save for retirement, and more. Notably, the state of Georgia recently required all public high school students to take a personal finance class. AJA needs to take action now. I'm going to meet with our administration to respectfully request that a required personal finance course is offered next year. It is essential to begin this foundational education with teens so we can avoid financial pitfalls as we enter the real world, rather than having to clean up our missteps as adults. Being financially literate is a fundamental life skill that is as important as being able to read and write, yet it has been ignored. If we continue to ignore it, many students at AJA will find themselves facing financial ruin, with insurmountable debt, no savings, and bad credit. This deficit can be fixed simply by requiring students to take a personal finance class. As a community, we need to ensure that this essential skill is taught so that students are well prepared for anything that might befall them, even a once-in-a-100-year pandemic. Thank you.
course look like next year? Specifically, would it be like an elective? Would it be pass or fail?
So I think a course like this, it shouldn't be graded. Grades wouldn't really add anything to this. The importance is learning the material. That's the key part. As finance is going to affect everyone for the rest of their lives, it's important that they learn it at a young age, as I mentioned before. So it's important to have that covered, and if someone doesn't understand it and fails the class, then they should be required to pass it, because it's more important that they know this information than are allowed to just do whatever they want at another period. I also think that this class would happen during an elective slot. Our school's already shown that they're willing to require certain classes during that time, such as the 2 Judaic ones. And because of the amount of time that people have at AJA and the amount of options they'll have over that time, I feel like an additional required course will not add much of a burden. Marley.
Do you think that the huge crisis of poverty when COVID hit would have been avoided if people were financially literate?
Yes, a huge portion of that could have been avoided. A lot of people have no savings. They're living paycheck to paycheck, as I mentioned at the beginning of my speech. This means that they have no money saved, and they're basically just making it by the skin of their teeth through every single month. So by having people save their money because they know about its importance, or having an emergency fund to even cover small crises, this would allow them to prevent something as big as that happening. So, yeah. Sivan?
But if people are living paycheck to paycheck, how can they have the money to put aside in emergency funds? Like, how would that work if they're barely even making enough money to sustain themselves as is?
Right. So there are a couple factors that go into that, but some people are living paycheck to paycheck just because they don't understand money. Like I said, people making over $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. And there are other people in lower groups that are also doing that, but this can be avoided by understanding how to manage money, especially budgeting. You can put some money aside, even if it's just a little bit at a time. If you do that over 10 years, and then a pandemic hits, you'll have at least a little bit of money saved, which will give you some buffer or some other crisis. Yeah.
Do you think that apps like Robinhood and like Venmo has like a cryptocurrency purchasing section? Do you think that those type of things are beneficial to the average American or detrimental?
So I think there are some out there that are positive. Like for some instances, some of them will save a little bit of money on each transaction. I can't remember, I think it's called Acorn or something. And that just puts a little bit of money aside so people don't even have to worry about that. I don't think crypto is important at this point in time. It's too volatile to be of any importance to someone learning the basics of finance, so I don't think that's really a part of the apps that it's any use. Duran.
Will the class focus exclusively on personal finance, or will it touch on macroeconomics, other stuff?
I think it will touch on mostly personal finance because that's what really matters. It's about managing your own money. But some other factors do affect that, so learning about a little bit about broader scale and other things like that can definitely help. Eli?
Do you think that taking a personal finance course should help us to grow more independent from sort of relying on banks or accountants to help us with financials, or do you think they're still important to sort of lean on?
There is still an importance in those two categories. Like banks, they're a good place to save your money because it can be insured by the government, and there's a bunch of different factors that go into that. And also people that help you manage your money, because it is very complicated, which is a big reason why this has become a problem recently. In the past it wasn't. Even just 20 years ago, finance was much simpler. But today it's become extremely complex, so it's important to learn how to manage that. So it will wean people off that relying on those groups and being able to be more independent, but they will still, relying on them is not necessarily a bad thing.